I need to tell you something tonight that I probably should have told you a long time ago. And if you leave before I finish, you might never understand why this moment matters so much to me. Because today, after months of silence, hesitation, second-guessing, and conversations that existed only inside my own head, I finally revealed my future wife's name, not to the world, not to a crowd, not to the people who keep asking questions, but to myself, out loud, for the first time. And the strange thing is, saying her name did not bring me peace. It brought fear, the kind of fear that appears when something stops being imagination and starts becoming real. Because as long as I never said your name, you remained a possibility, a dream, a beautiful uncertainty. But the moment I spoke it, something changed. The future suddenly felt closer, and that terrified me. Have you ever wanted something so deeply that getting closer to it scared you more than losing it? Have you ever spent so much time imagining someone that the possibility of actually meeting them felt dangerous? That is where I am tonight, sitting here, looking at a future I used to think was far away, and realizing it might be approaching much faster than I expected. The truth is, people think loneliness comes from being alone. They are wrong. Real loneliness comes from knowing exactly what your heart wants, and not knowing where she is, not knowing if she is happy, not knowing if she is safe, not knowing if she has spent her own nights wondering whether someone out there is thinking about her, too. I wonder that about you more often than I admit. Sometimes I imagine you watching this years from now, maybe smiling, maybe crying, maybe shaking your head because you already know something I still haven't learned. Maybe because you remember this night better than I do. And maybe that sounds irrational. Maybe it sounds impossible. But love has never obeyed logic. The biggest decisions of my life never came from spreadsheets. They never came from projections. They never came from certainty. They came from instincts I couldn't explain. And somehow those instincts brought me here, talking to a woman whose face I may not have seen, whose voice I may not have heard, yet somehow, whose absence I already feel. That sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud. But it is true, because there is a difference between missing a person and missing a place in your life that only one person can fill. For years, I convinced myself that achievement would silence that feeling. I thought building more would fix it. I thought accomplishing more would erase it. I thought success would eventually become enough. It never did. The victories were real. The milestones were real. But at the end of every celebration, there was still an empty chair, and eventually I stopped pretending not to notice it. You know what frightened me the most? Not the possibility that I would never meet you. It was the possibility that I would, because meeting you would require something I have never been completely comfortable with. Vulnerability. Real vulnerability. Not the kind people perform, not the kind people post. The terrifying kind. The kind where another human being gains the power to hurt you. The kind where your future suddenly depends on choices you cannot control. The kind where love stops being an idea and becomes a risk. I have always understood risk, business risk, financial risk, strategic risk. Those are simple. Emotional risk is different because numbers cannot protect you. Intelligence cannot protect you. Experience cannot protect you. When your heart is involved, you are exposed. And maybe that is why I waited so long to say your name. Not because I wasn't sure about you, because I wasn't sure about myself. I wasn't sure I was ready for everything your name represented: commitment, responsibility, trust, permanence. Do those words scare you too? Do you ever lie awake wondering whether love is worth the risk? Whether opening your heart is brave or foolish? Whether choosing one person means giving up 1,000 possibilities? I ask myself those questions more often than anyone knows. And maybe that is why tonight feels different. Because for the first time, I stopped running from the answers. Before I continue, if this message somehow finds you, I hope you'll subscribe and stay close to these conversations and tell me where you're watching from. Because tonight, I feel like distance matters less than honesty. The strange thing is, the moment I finally revealed your name, I expected certainty. Instead, I found more questions. Questions I wasn't prepared for. Because saying your name forced me to confront something uncomfortable. What if I have spent all this time building a future without asking whether you would even want to be part of it? What if the life I imagine isn't the life you dream about? What if the things I value most are not the things you need most? These questions stayed with me all day. They followed me through every meeting, every conversation, every quiet moment, and underneath all of them was one terrifying realization. Love is not about finding the right person. It is about becoming someone capable of loving the right person well. And suddenly I wasn't evaluating you anymore. I was evaluating myself. Would I be patient enough? Would I listen enough? Would I stay when things became difficult? Would I choose understanding over pride? Would I know how to protect something fragile without controlling it? Those questions are harder than people think, because anyone can promise forever when everything feels perfect. The real test comes later, when life becomes complicated, when misunderstandings appear, when fear arrives, when old wounds start speaking louder than present truths. That is when love reveals what it actually is. And I need you to know something. There is a reason I hesitated before revealing your name, a reason much deeper than fear, a reason I have not shared with anyone. In fact, I haven't told you the real reason yet, and when I finally do, you may understand why this decision became far more complicated than anyone could imagine, because the truth hiding behind your name is connected to a choice I never expected to face, a choice that has been quietly growing larger every single day. And tonight, for the first time, I am no longer sure which direction my heart is moving. I thought revealing your name would end the conflict. Instead, it may have started one. And what happened after I spoke, that name is something I still haven't fully processed. Something that forced me to question whether I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. The moment I spoke your name out loud, I expected relief. I expected the noise in my mind to settle. I expected all the uncertainty to finally organize itself into something clear. Instead, everything became louder. It felt as if I had opened a door that had been locked for years, only to discover another door behind it, and another, and another. Every answer created a new question. Every certainty produced a new fear. That night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, I sat alone, staring at a blank screen. Not working, not reading, not planning, just staring, thinking about you, thinking about a woman whose name had finally become real enough to say, and wondering whether reality was about to destroy the fantasy I had protected for so long. Because fantasies are safe. They never disagree with you. They never misunderstand you. They never disappoint you. Real people do. Real love does. And suddenly I realized something uncomfortable. I had spent years preparing for a future wife, but I wasn't sure I had prepared for an actual woman. A woman with fears. A woman with scars. A woman with her own disappointments. A woman who might not see me the way I hoped she would. That thought unsettled me more than I expected. Not because I wanted perfection, but because I wanted something real. And real things are fragile. The next morning I woke up carrying a feeling I could not explain. A feeling that something important was approaching. You know those moments in life when nothing has happened yet, but somehow your heart already knows change is coming. That was how it felt. Every conversation seemed heavier. Every memory felt closer. Every decision seemed connected to a future I could not yet see. And that is when something happened that I never planned to tell anyone. Something that changed everything. Something that became the hidden truth behind your name. The truth is, for a long time, there wasn't only one future I could imagine. There were two, not two women, two versions of my life. One version was predictable, safe-controlled, a future built on logic, a future where every decision made sense. A future where I could avoid emotional risk. The other version contained you, uncertainty, vulnerability, possibility. The first future protected me. The second future transformed me. And for months I stood between them, unable to move, unable to choose, unable to admit that the safest future was quietly becoming the loneliest one. That is the real reason revealing your name mattered, because your name represented a decision, not a person. Not at first, decision, a declaration that I was willing to stop hiding behind certainty. But there is more, much more, and I think you deserve the truth. The full truth, the truth I have been avoiding. You see, there was a moment when I almost convinced myself to walk away. Not from you, from the idea of you. I almost chose a life that required less courage, a life where I could stay emotionally protected, a life where nobody would ever get close enough to hurt me. Do you know how tempting that becomes after enough disappointments? Do you know how attractive emotional distance looks when you've spent years carrying responsibilities? Sometimes people don't stop loving because they lose faith in love. Sometimes they stop because they lose faith in themselves. And that is what nearly happened to me. There were nights when I looked at my future and thought, maybe I am asking for too much. Maybe deep connection only exists in stories. Maybe mature love is just compromise. Maybe everyone eventually settles. Maybe passion fades. Maybe emotional intimacy is temporary. Maybe the safest option is simply to expect less. I hate admitting that, but it is true. Those thoughts visited me repeatedly, quietly, persistently, and the frightening part is that they almost won. I almost believed them. I almost built an entire future around fear. Then something happened, not a dramatic event, not a miracle, not a revelation, something smaller. I imagined meeting you years from now, not as my wife, as a stranger, passing each other in a world where neither of us took the risk, and the image haunted me. I imagined seeing kindness in your eyes. I imagined feeling an immediate recognition. I imagined realizing we had both chosen safety instead of courage, and I could not stop thinking about it, because some regrets heal, others don't. Some mistakes can be corrected, others become permanent. And suddenly my greatest fear changed. I was no longer afraid of loving the wrong person. I became afraid of never allowing myself to love the right one. That realization hit me harder than anything else. But then, just when I thought I was moving toward clarity, everything became more complicated, because life has a strange habit of testing convictions the moment you finally find them. A few days after revealing your name, I experienced something I wasn't prepared for. An old memory resurfaced, a memory I thought I had buried, a memory connected to someone who once mattered deeply, someone who represented a version of my past I believed was finished. And for a moment, everything shook. Questions returned, doubts returned, old emotions returned. Not because I still wanted that chapter, but because unfinished emotions have a way of pretending they still belong in the present. Suddenly I was comparing futures, comparing possibilities, comparing emotions, comparing versions of myself, and I hated it, because love should not feel like a calculation. Yet there I was, analyzing, questioning, overthinking, trying to solve something that could only be felt. Have you ever been terrified that your heart was sending mixed signals? Have you ever wondered whether you were moving forward or simply running away from the past? Those questions followed me everywhere, and eventually they pushed me toward a breaking point, a real one, not the dramatic kind people talk about, the quiet kind, the dangerous kind, the kind where you smile in public and unravel in private, the kind where nobody notices you're struggling because you've become too good at hiding it. That breaking point arrived late one evening. I remember sitting alone. The room was silent, the world felt distant, and for the first time in years, I cried, not because I was weak, not because I was overwhelmed, because I was exhausted, exhausted from carrying uncertainty, exhausted from pretending clarity would arrive on its own, exhausted from fighting a battle nobody else could see. And during that moment, something terrifying entered my mind, a thought that nearly changed everything. What if I was choosing the wrong woman? The moment that question appeared, I couldn't make it leave. It echoed, agon, agon, agon. What if I was wrong? What if my heart was mistaken? What if my future was built on an illusion? What if revealing your name had been the beginning of a mistake rather than the end of one? That question nearly destroyed all the progress I had made. And the worst part, I didn't know how to answer it, because every answer created another doubt, every doubt created another fear, and every fear pushed me closer to a decision I would soon regret. What happened next is still difficult for me to talk about, because it was the closest I ever came to abandoning everything, the closest I ever came to choosing certainty over love. the closest I ever came to walking away from the future I truly wanted. And when I finally discovered why that question kept haunting me, the answer was not what I expected, not even close. What happened next changed the way I understand love forever. Not because I discovered something extraordinary about you, because I discovered something uncomfortable about myself. For days after that breakdown, I carried the same question everywhere. What if I was choosing the wrong woman? It sounded logical, responsible, even the kind of question an intelligent person should ask before making a life-changing commitment. But eventually I noticed something strange. Every time that question appeared, it was always followed by another one, a quieter one, a more honest one, a question I kept trying not to hear. What if I am simply afraid? Not afraid of choosing the wrong woman, afraid of finally choosing one woman. There is a difference. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it, because suddenly every doubt looked different. Every hesitation looked different. Every fear looked different. I started realizing that many of the questions I had been treating as wisdom were actually disguises, fear disguised as caution, fear disguised as logic, fear disguised as patience, fear disguised as responsibility, and that realization hurt, because it forced me to confront a truth I had avoided for years. I wasn't struggling to trust you. I was struggling to trust happiness. Some people become so familiar with uncertainty that peace feels suspicious. Some people spend so much time preparing for disappointment that they don't know how to receive love when it finally arrives. I was becoming one of those people. I kept searching for reasons something might go wrong, matching for flaws, matching for warnings, matching for evidence that I should stay emotionally protected. Every time I searched, I found exactly what I was looking for, because fear is an excellent storyteller. It can create entire futures that do not exist. It can convince you to abandon beautiful things before they have a chance to grow. It can make loneliness feel safer than vulnerability. And for a while, I listened. I listened far longer than I should have. Then one evening, something happened, a moment so simple that most people would have missed it. I was sitting alone again, thinking about everything, thinking about the future, thinking about you, thinking about the possibility that I was making the wrong decision. And suddenly, I asked myself a different question. Not, what if she is wrong for me? But what if she is right for me? The room became silent, because I realized I had spent months investigating every possible danger, yet almost no time considering the possibility that my heart might actually be right. What if all this fear wasn't a warning? What if it was evidence that something truly mattered? After all, nobody fears losing what means nothing to them. Nobody lies awake thinking about futures they don't care about. Nobody carries this much emotional weight for a person who is unimportant. And slowly, very slowly, pieces began falling into place. The question was never whether I could guarantee a perfect future. Nobody can. The question was whether I was willing to build one, despite uncertainty, because that is what mature love really is. Not certainty, commitment, not prediction, trust, not guarantees, choice, every single day, again and again. And once I understood that, another truth emerged. The old memory that had returned, the past that had shaken me, the confusion that almost pulled me backward. None of it was about love. It was about familiarity. The past felt comfortable because it was known. Even its pain was familiar. But familiar is not the same as right. Many people return to old chapters, not because those chapters are beautiful, but because uncertainty scares them more than repetition. I almost made that mistake. I almost allowed old emotions to convince me they still belonged in my future. I almost chose what was familiar instead of what was meaningful. And if I had, I would have spent the rest of my life wondering about you, wondering who you became, wondering what we might have built together, wondering whether courage could have changed everything. That would have been the real tragedy, not heartbreak. Regret, because heartbreak eventually heals. Regret has a way of staying. It visits anniversaries, birthdays, quiet evenings, unexpected moments. It whispers questions that can never be fully answered. And I realized I did not want a future filled with those questions. Which brings me to the truth I have delayed for so long, the truth behind your name. the truth behind this entire confession, the truth behind every hesitation, every fear, every sleepless night.